Welcome to Better Than Ever Live, wherever you're watching or wherever you're listening. Hope you're making today your masterpiece. On today's show, we're going to talk about an eye exam that might predict your risk of heart attack. We'll talk about how almost everybody overestimates the quality of their diet. A lack of vitamin D might lead to dementia, how your brain practices while you sleep. What are vagus nerve exercises and how can you do them and what are the benefits and why being stressed at work actually might make you more likable. A lot of good stuff. My name's Dr. David Geier, double board certified orthopedic surgeon, sports medicine specialist, media medical expert. I help you feel and perform your best regardless of age, injury, or medical history. Please understand in this live stream on this show, all of my videos, I'm not giving you medical advice. This is meant for general information and educational purposes only. If you have comments or questions about some of the studies we're going to talk about in today's show, leave those in the chat. Facebook, LinkedIn, you guys know where to leave that because you only have one choice. But YouTube, don't put them in the comments, put them in the chat because that's the only place I can see it. I'd love for you to leave your first name and where you're located along with your comment or question. And if you have injury questions, orthopedic type questions, save those for tomorrow, 12 p.m. Eastern Time for Ask Dr. Geier Live. That's where I do those every Friday. So I've got a lot of good stuff, a little not as much exercise and stuff as I normally talk about, not as much nutrition. We're going to talk a lot about stress and mental health and heart attacks like we're about to talk about now. Georgia, it's good to see you. So this is a true thing. I actually just saw this study a week or two ago and I thought it was really interesting. There is a way to predict your risk of heart attack that does not involve tests for your heart. In fact, it involves an eye exam, or more specifically, a retinal scan. There's new research found that the appearance, the shape, the configuration of the blood vessels at the back of your retina in your eye is a biomarker for myocardial infarction or heart attack. This came from research that was presented at the European Society for Human Genetics about a month ago. It was data from the UK Biobank, over 500,000 individuals in this. And of that 500,000 individuals, 38,000 of them who had their retinas scanned then went on to later have heart attacks. So they got this huge database, 38,000 people who had heart attacks, but we also have retina scans. Well, what it turned out they found is that when they looked at the back of the retina on either side where it connects to what's called the optic nerve, there's two large systems of blood vessels normally. And in a healthy person, those blood vessels look like a tree branch and they're kind of going off in all sorts of different directions. But in some people, they don't have that really complex tree branch type of appearance. It's basically a straight line or very simplified vascular branching. And what they found out using artificial intelligence and this deep learning model was that there was a connection between low retinal vascular complexity, basically the sort of the straight line blood vessels, not the tree branching. There was a link between, again, the not having the tree branch type of vascular appearance and coronary artery disease. This could, and what they're going to go ahead and test, it sounds like, is they're going to move it on to say, hey, let's see what else this correlates to. Does it correlate to stroke? Does this correlate to erectile dysfunction? Does this correlate to Alzheimer's disease? It could be any number of things. Why this is really interesting is potentially, and we'll see, they'll have to do more studies about this, how early can we detect problems that are related to cardiovascular disease? Could it detect early changes in your 20s and 30s while you still can really reverse the changes? Not that you can't reverse problems down the road, but you certainly want to fix problems as early as possible. Plus, this is a very minimally invasive test. If you go to an optometrist or ophthalmologist every year for an annual eye exam, or your primary care doctor, maybe this is something that you can teach. Or that you can test. Serial killer, hello, good to see you. I think that's really exciting. I think the more we can transition medicine into preventative work and not treatment after the fact, that is so beneficial. If you can prevent heart attacks, just in this case being the example, that would be a major, major step forward. All right. There's a study that was presented at the American Society of Nutrition at their annual meeting, asking people 20 years old and older, I love this study, it's so true, 20 years old and older, to evaluate or predict, I guess, to rate how healthy their diet was, anywhere from excellent to poor. And then they basically then went back and looked at all those people's diets and applied the healthy eating index to the patient's recall of their diet over a 24-hour period. Now, this healthy eating index, the HEI, is this tool that measures how well a diet aligns with the dietary guidelines for Americans, and it creates a score between 0 and 100. And it is based on 13 components, 9 of which are what are called adequacy components. Basically, how much are you eating enough fruits, vegetables, grains, dairy, protein, that kind of thing. And then there were 4 what we call moderation components. Basically, how little of this do we consume? Refined grains, sodium, saturated fats, and added sugars. Now, there were almost 10,000 people in this study. Now, just think about this for a second. How do you think the average person rates their diet? Be thinking about that as I'm kind of giving you the scores, because I kind of know where I fit and where I'd put myself, whether it's excellent, very good, good, fair, poor. But I'm curious what you would say. Well, 8% of people rated their diet as excellent. That probably sounds about what I would expect. I might have expected it to be a little higher, but no, that sounds about right. 22 is very good, 41% is good, 24% is fair, 6% rated their diet as poor. And that may be not surprising as well. Now, when they went back and looked at the diets of all of those people and made a score based on what their diet actually was, less than 1% of them, 21 participants, actually had a diet that fell into the excellent category and got an A. 70%, over 6,700 of them, 70% got an F, a poor diet. 70% of the people in this study. 3% got a B, 9% got a C, 19% got a D. So out of 9,757 adults, almost 10,000, 15% accurately guessed the quality of their diet. Now, one group did really well guessing the accuracy of the diet. The group that said, hey, I've got a poor diet, that was the 6%. 97% of those people were right. But 6% said they had a poor diet, but 7 out of 10 actually did have a health or had a poor diet. It's just stunning to me how bad our diets are and how horrible we are at realizing we have a bad diet. Generally, adults in this country, as this shows, cannot accurately assess the quality of their diets. Where that potentially matters is, all right, you go to the doctor says, all right, so how healthy are you eating? Now I know I'm not going to believe anybody. Yeah, there may be a few that are accurate, 15%, but way less than 50-50. I'm going to assume that absolutely nobody can predict the quality of their diet, and they greatly overestimate the quality of the diet. Serial killer says, I believe it. Yeah, I believe it too. I'm just stunned at the severity of how off it is. That gets me. The 70% poor diet is higher than I would expect. I would have thought somewhere 50, maybe 55%. So that doesn't surprise me too much. But the fact that only 6% of people thought that their diet was poor really surprises me. All right, one of the supplements that I'm a big fan of for so many people. Again, this is not medical advice, as I say all the time, but I am a big fan of vitamin D because such a huge percentage of the population is vitamin D deficient. This has been studied at the pro football level. The study of the New York Giants many years ago, I think it was something like 81% of the New York Giants were found to be vitamin D deficient. It's a huge percentage of the population. And to be fair, largely it's because we are indoors all day. We don't go outside and get sun. Well, there was a new study published in the Journal of Clinical Nutrition that shows that having a low vitamin D level is actually associated with a smaller brain volume, increased risk of dementia, increased risk of stroke, and that we could prevent about 1/5 of dementia cases just by keeping our vitamin D in a healthy range. There was a study done in Australia at the University of Australia. They studied, again, the UK Biobank huge database. In this one, they had almost 300,000 people. And they compared all of those people's vitamin D levels with brain imaging. And that brain imaging looked at the size of their gray matter, the size of their white matter, the size of the hippocampus, which is the part of the brain responsible for memory and other executive functions. And what they found out, people that had a genetically higher level of vitamin D had a decreased dementia risk. The odds of dementia decreased as vitamin D got higher, up to about 50 nanomoles per liter. That's kind of the reference range, but up to 50. After that, the benefits got less marked. Now, vitamin D is obviously in this study associated with brain health, but it's important to so many aspects of our health: our bones, our muscles, our immune systems, our hearts, cardiovascular disease. And the conclusion of the authors is, hey, most of us, it's not a big deal. We don't have super low vitamin D levels, but hey, if you're not getting enough vitamin D through the sun, maybe you change your diet, maybe you take a supplement. I will tell you, having done now a little bit more integrative medicine as part of my orthopedics, a huge percentage of people are low in vitamin D. I like to have people between 60 and 80. I know this study said 50, and after 50, the benefits weren't so great or didn't get that much better for the brain. But the benefits of vitamin D, 55 to 80, 60 to 80, really beneficial. Very few people, and I'm in Charleston, South Carolina, where it's sunny, we've got the beach, so people are outdoors a lot, and still huge percentage of people deficient in vitamin D. And so I would argue there aren't that many people that couldn't benefit from supplementation. Again, not medical advice, talk to your doctor, get lab tests, but from a brain, immune health, bone health, all sorts of different reasons, vitamin D seems to be very beneficial. Look at that. Vitamin D was 67. That's awesome. That's what mine is, but I've been doing supplementation. Mine's like 64 or something like that. But after years of a supplement, I personally take 5,000 IUs a day. I know the sort of the conventional recommendations are 400 or 800 or 1,000. I think it can be way higher than that. Not like I just read a news story a few days ago. Somebody overdosed on vitamin D by taking 150,000 IUs a day. Why in the world you would take that much, I have no idea. But again, talk to your doctor, kind of see where you stand as far as that goes. All right, this is a really interesting study. It's not medical per se, but I think it's really interesting. It was in the Journal of Neuroscience, and it's looking at how your brain practices things during sleep. This was a study at Mass General Hospital, and we've known for a long time with studies of lab animals that their brains do what's called replay during sleep. So if you train a mouse to get through a maze and it's finding its way around, then they can basically show, looking at specific patterns of brain cells, neurons, that light up as they find the correct route through the maze. Now, later that night when the animal's sleeping, scientists have found that those same neurons fire in the same order again, that they're basically practicing that. And that seems to be how the brain practices newly learned information. That's how your memory is thought to be consolidated, converted from short to long-term memory. But that's only been shown in lab animals until this study. So there was a study looking at the human motor cortex, and it was basically a very similar thing. They took a 36-year-old man who was quadriplegic, so he couldn't move his upper and lower limbs from a spinal cord injury, and he was asked to basically perform a memory task. If you remember the game Simon, where you observe a pattern of flashing colored lights, then you have to remember the pattern and then repeat it. Well, basically, he couldn't move his arms, but he could control a cursor on the computer screen by thinking about the movement in his own hand. He basically had sensors implanted in his motor cortex, which measured his neuronal firing, similar to the rat study or the mouse study. But basically, those patterns of neuronal firing showed what his hand intended to do, and they programmed it to allow him to move the cursor around the screen that way and be able to click it. So what they, as he did it with this game, sort of like Simon, they recorded his brain signals, and then when he slept later that night, again, they were recording the activity in his motor cortex, and guess what? They basically saw his neurons, his brain cells, replaying that game overnight. Same neuron firing, same patterns that he had done while he was doing that game. Really, really fascinating. So where this goes, and I've talked about this a little bit as it pertains to things like studying for tests and performing at work the next day. Getting a good night's sleep is really important, because if you're learning a new task, whether it's memory, just facts you're trying to learn, or if it's something that you have to practice, playing the piano or any number of things, you do that and then you go to sleep, your brain is going to work on that while you sleep. So it's a combination of what your brain does while awake, but then your brain doing it at night. That's also what I would say, probably a good reason not to skimp on sleep before a big performance, before a big test, because you need your brain to consolidate that memory, to practice, to replay, so that you're able to do it the next day. All right, vagus nerve exercises. This is something I didn't know much about. Obviously, I knew what the vagus nerve was, but there is benefit to working your vagus nerve. This is the longest cranial nerve in your body. It passes from your brain all the way down to your gut. It goes through your heart, it has involvement there, in your lungs and your intestinal organs. It's involved in things like heart rate, digestion, sweating, speech, taste, all sorts of, breathing. It's got all kinds of functions thought to be involved in things like mood and immune regulation, maybe even reflexes like sneezing, swallowing, coughing, things like that. Most famously, what the vagus nerve does is that it allows us to get back into a state of calm after a stressful event. But as we get older, sometimes the vagus nerve doesn't work so well. Sometimes it's chronic stress. A lot of times chronic stress causes it not work so well. So there is some research that says, hey, if we do vagus nerve stimulation exercise on a regular basis, not only can that help us reduce stress and help us function overall, have overall better well-being, but make the vagus nerve work better in the future. And some of the thoughts that might benefit of doing these vagal stimulation nerves, reduced inflammation, reduced seizures potentially, better mood, better mental health, improved relationships, I don't know, maybe, improved blood pressure, improved sleep, improves blood circulation, better energy, better immune response, all good things. So how can you activate the vagus nerve? And so this article that I read suggested 4 or 5 different things that we'll talk about. One was something called Sky Yoga. This is a 45-minute session, 3 breathing techniques. You do it at different paces, but basically the one that you've probably heard of is the Om chanting. You sit upright, comfortable position, closed eyes, sit on the floor with your legs crossed, sit on a mat, something like that. You inhale and then you exhale on an Om sound. That Om sound creates vibrations in the center of your body that stimulates the vagus nerve. The second is one called box breathing, and you may not have heard that term, but you may have heard of a breathing technique, I'm almost positive this is right, that the Navy SEALs use. This is something they're really big on from what I understand. So this works by you basically long exhale, get all the air out of your lungs, then you slowly breathe in to a count of 4. Then you hold your breath for a count of 4. Then you exhale for a count of 4, and then you hold your breath with all that out again for a count of 4, and then you do the cycle all over again. 4 inhale, 4 hold, 4 exhale, 4 hold, and you do that 3 to 5 times. I will say I have done that sometimes that I've had pretty severe anxiety, and I was really impressed by how well this works. Now, the third one that I'm going to mention to you, I am skeptical of this. Maybe it works. It seems like this would be counterproductive, and this is cold water immersion. We've talked about this before. The ice baths, the cryotherapy. Well, it doesn't even have to be that fancy, but the theory is that cold water, cold compresses can stimulate the vagal nerve basically because of shock to the sympathetic nervous system. So this could be a cold compress to the side or the front of your neck, the front of your chest, dunking your face in cold water, taking a cold shower, or taking a warm shower, switching to cold water for the last few minutes of it. Supposedly people have a noticeable calming effect, and I think that that's actually true. My understanding of cold water immersion is not so much vagal nerve related, but maybe it is, but that it increases the release of norepinephrine or noradrenaline, and that has an antidepressive effect when you release that. So maybe it stimulates the vagus nerve, but it's on this list. Another one, real simple, exercise. Get your heart rate up. That's a great way to keep your vagus nerve working and in good tone. And then the last one, 3-part breathing. Another different type of breathing thing. You sit or lie flat on your back. You breathe in through your nose, allowing your belly to expand. And then as you continue to inhale, then you expand through your rib cage. And finally, the last part of the inhale is inhaling through your upper chest. Then you pause at the top and you slowly exhale. Exhale from the chest, then exhale from the rib cage, then exhale from the belly. Pause and then repeat that 2 or 3 times. So if you deal with anxiety, if you deal with stress, maybe try any one of those or multiple of those vagus nerve exercises. All right, the last thing I want to talk about is being more likable at work. I mean, who wants to be unlikable? Nobody, right? Well, there's a really interesting way that you can do this, and I, in a million years, would never have thought that this is true, but one thing about work is that we all face stress. That's pretty normal. But it appears that the more we show that stress, the more likable we seem to be. Now, we're talking about mild stress. We're not talking about being frantic and all over the place and driving everybody crazy. But these researchers took 31 volunteers. They had each one prepare for a fake job interview. They thought they were going to be interviewed. They were supposed to give a 3-minute speech about themselves and then take this weird math test where they had to count backwards from the number 1022 in 13s and do it as fast and accurately as they could until they stopped. So pretty stressful. Nobody likes public speaking. Number one fear of adults is public speaking, even more than the fear of death. And then a math test in front of a job interviewer, that would be pretty daunting too. So then what they did is they did a questionnaire about stress, but more importantly, they did saliva tests for the stress hormone cortisol. And I'm a big fan of salivary cortisol tests as a way to measure acute and chronic stress. But anyway, what they found out is in those fake job interviews, a whole bunch of those people got anxious, as would be seen with elevations in the salivary cortisol. And those people were also filmed during their job interviews, every one of them. So they took those videos, showed them to 133 people, and the people looking at them didn't know anything about them. But they watched these interviews, and what they figured, or what they said, is the more stressed people, whether they were touching their face, scratching their heads, doing other signs to show that they were struggling, the people watching the videos actually found those more stressed people actually more likable. Apparently, we're attracted to people who are honest and open and showing signs of stress, showing signs of weakness. Apparently, that's a good way to show that you're trustworthy, which would be useful in making friends and having relationships with people. More likable people appear to be able to develop social connections. They can build and maintain social networks. They can keep friends. So not acting like everything's okay is okay. Showing that you're struggling a little bit, not such a bad thing. Maybe not every day, maybe not in such a way that it disrupts the workplace, but not trying to be super stoic, maybe that's not always the best thing. All right, that is all I've got for you today. God Gaming, I see you got an ACL question. Join us tomorrow, 12 p.m. Eastern Time for Ask Dr. Geier Live. That's when I answer orthopedic questions. If you have any other thoughts on the topics we talked today, vagus nerve stimulation, being likable at work, vitamin D, how bad our diets are, leave those in the comments. Otherwise, please remember, if you like videos like this, you like live chats like this, health, wellness, anything, nutrition, exercise, anything like that, healing, recovery from orthopedic injuries so you can feel and perform your best, regardless of age, injury, or medical history, subscribe to this channel. Click the bell to be notified anytime I start a new stream, anytime I release a new video. If you do have an orthopedic injury, tendon, ligament, bone, cartilage, muscle, whatever, and you want to see somebody that knows about those injuries in athletes and active people, I'd love to help. As you know, I'm a double board certified orthopedic surgeon and sports medicine specialist working on a third board certification in anti-aging and regenerative medicine. I'd love to help you with all your options, not just surgery, cortisone shots, physical therapy. There's a link to my website in the description, drdavidgeier.com, and you can just go to there. There's a contact page, fill that out, and we can figure out how you can either see me in Charleston, South Carolina, or we can work together some other way. So please just think of that. Let me get that off the screen. Georgia says, I've been missing your lives lately. I'm not doing as many as I used to. I think I'm going down, let me try to get that off the screen, to just Thursdays only. My Tuesdays, one of when I started this live show, I was transitioning to the new practice. So you start a new practice, you're not as busy. I am now getting busier and busier, and it's getting unpredictable if I'm done by 5 p.m. Eastern on Tuesday. So that's why I've gone to Thursdays. Still doing the Fridays. And then last week I was speaking at a medical conference, and so I was gone, and I was 6 hours different from my normal time zone. And so I did not feel like doing that Ask Dr. Geier live at 6 in the morning. So that's why I didn't do that. But Georgia, I appreciate it, and I will be here as often as I can. It means a lot that people like these. Remember, join us. Oh, you are welcome. Remember to join us on Friday, tomorrow, 12 p.m. Eastern Time. If you have orthopedic questions like God Gaming has, surgery, rehab, injury, recovery, anything like that, I will stay as long as there's questions. So definitely join us tomorrow. Thank you so much for watching. Make sure to subscribe to Better Than Ever Live, wherever you get your podcasts, and the Better Than Ever Daily podcast. Both of those, Spotify, Stitcher, Apple, Google, wherever you get your podcasts, definitely download those so that if you can't make it live, you get to listen to those wherever you are. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you very soon. Take care.